We always look forward to Fridays in Chelsea Barnes' Bright Spots report. This evening, a historic newspaper thriving in today's digital age.
Earlier, I asked our newsroom full of college-aged interns how many of them have ever gotten their news from an actual newspaper. You won't be surprised, not one of them raised their hand. These days, digital dominates. But today's Bright Spots report takes us down the road and back in time to Bibb County, where folks there still care about getting their news the old-fashioned way.
Well, the Centreville Press has been in operation in Bibb County, Alabama, I think since 1879, I believe.
Rutherford B. Hayes was president of the United States back then. There were only 38 states in the Union, and that's the same year Thomas Edison perfected his carbonized cotton filament light bulb.
Of course, I wasn't here at that time, although I look like I might have been.
Today, David Daniel owns the Centreville Press, which is the newspaper of record in Bibb County.
The newspaper of record means that legal notices, legal notifications, legal advertising, that kind of thing, is done in the papers, and the archives are kept for these papers, so the historical record is a part of the Centreville Press, and I'll show you those later on, and be glad to show you some of the printing presses that are still in this building that were used back in the 1960s, and one back here that goes back way further than that.
And I was more than happy to go on that tour back in time.
Well, you're walking into a museum now, no question about it. This is a original Heidelberg printing press.
They don't make machines like this anymore. And even journalism has changed from what it used to be.
Well, if you've ever been on Facebook, you probably would notice that there is a plethora of content there, but no credibility per se, other than opinions and innuendo and so forth. We don't do that in the paper. The paper is reporting what we know is the news of the day, and we try to keep our opinions out of our articles. That's one of the reasons why I think the newspaper of record is such an important thing for any community. And that's why I want to continue the legacy of this gentleman over here, which I think your audience is going to be interested in meeting this guy.
These are old files that go all the way back to 1879.
This guy doesn't need much of an introduction. I'd bet money many of you already know him, or at least you've heard of him. Say hello to Mr. Jim Oakley. Before his 30-year journalism career at the University of Alabama, Oakley was the third generation of his family to own and run the Centreville Press.
There's a story about how this press came in our family.
And an interesting story it is. Oakley's grandfather was a railroad man back in the early 1900s. He had a disagreement with the then owner of the Centreville Press over politics.
My granddad said, "I'll just buy you out of here." And so he said, "Put your money up." So that day, my granddad became owner of the press. So he went home at lunch that day and said to my grandmother, he always called her old lady. He said, "Old lady, guess what?" Says, "You're editor of the Centreville Press." And she said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I bought the paper this morning."
Oh, if these walls could talk. They house the past of the Centreville Press, every issue dating back to 1879, and now the future.
This is a great issue. I mean, they're doing a good job with the newspaper. This is what a newspaper ought to be. And they're doing what a newspaper should do for the people.
My hope is that we can carry on the traditions that began back at the founding of the country and keep the newspaper business alive and keep our community thriving, informed, and moving forward.
The Centreville Press actually just launched their web edition. You can subscribe at centrevillepress.com. If you have a bright spot you'd like to share, we of course want to hear about it. You can submit your idea on our website, WVUA23.com. Just click on Bright Spots.
Bright Spots is brought to you by Jalapenos Mexican Grill, home of the fajita gumbo.